All right, here we go. Ain't nothing to it but to do it. I'm gonna do my best to not try to be all tongue in cheek. Like, I'm taking this seriously, and I'm hitting record down here on. This is chapter 1 in my book, and here we go. So, how do we get to here? How do we get to a point where I'm sitting in front of a camera with a stack of my favorite books to my left, a model of a skeleton to my right, and an old sign, steel, rusty, from my old fitness studio in the city hanging behind me? How do we get to this point? Well, we start by being born to a certain set of parents, for better or for worse. This isn't an opportunity for me to knock on my parents. On the contrary, I'd like to praise them for putting the alchemy together that makes me and has made me who I am. So I want to thank them, for better or for worse. It definitely wasn't all good all the time. And I can tell you, after my sophomore year of college, I was given the opportunity to go salmon fishing in Alaska. And I don't mean recreationally, I mean as an employee in the industry, and work on a salmon fishing boat. Seemed like a super awesome fun time with a bunch of guys from college. Some of them were going to hitchhike. I was going to fly out west to Seattle, meet up with a buddy of mine named Mike, and then he and I were going to find our way to Alaska, presumably by hitchhiking and maybe taking some ferries, but ultimately a adventure nonetheless. One that somehow, as a 20-year-old, my parents discouraged on some level, and rightfully so. They were concerned. I wasn't in the habit of taking big trips on my own. Just wasn't something I had done when I was 20. I'd really only been out of high school 2 years, and prior to that I had been under their wing entirely. So this is 20-year-old deciding to take a flight out west, meet up with somebody who they didn't know, and go through a lot of different obstacles and experiences that would have been unpredictable and potentially dangerous. And I tell you that, I set that scene because this is the first little crux, the little nuance of like what needed to happen and needs to happen. And that is, everything in my world at that time was telling me to stay in my lane, go to engineering school. I was in engineering school, struggling. I was just finished my second year of college, struggling. And everything in the external world said, stay in your lane, don't do anything risky, don't do anything crazy, don't hang out with these wild guys who are able to get away and are going to do this. And then there was the core of my being, which said, you have to do this. If you don't do this, this is a defining moment in your life. If you don't do this, then the next time something comes up where there's an opportunity to take a risk and go on an adventure, you'll be that much more hesitant. And so I knew that I had to do it. That being said, I head out to Alaska with nothing but really the clothes on my back and the desire to have an adventure. But I really hadn't jumped off into the unknown fully, because I knew this was just going to be a temporary summer thing, right? So it was like kind of going like the summer camp. The stakes weren't super high. I also knew I had my parents in school to go back to, so didn't need to No. I also know I did a fucking thing. Stop recording. It wasn't super high stakes, so I knew that I needed to that I hadn't really made the official jump off into autonomous adult life. I knew I was going back to college, back to I had my parents and my life, at home in Pittsburgh, aside from the fact that I was in college at Virginia Tech, and that was the cradle. My umbilical cord was still very much attached. And I go up there, I happen to be reading a book that, due to the fact that maybe I was isolated in Alaska and not the work conditions where I ended up working in a cannery, in a salmon cannery. The work conditions there were horrendous, in that you couldn't talk to anybody because it was so loud. You had a beard guard on and a hairnet and full, looked like whatever the Fisherman's Friend or whatever the your favorite fish sticks brand, where the guy is like wearing all yellow rubber with the the big boots and everything. So I'm in Alaska wearing this get up, can't talk to anybody. I'm reading the book Shogun, a novel of Japan by James Clavell, and something about it was just so romantic, the way that they lived in Japan at that time. Feudal Japan. There was the warrior code of Bushido. People talk about it, stay in your lane. People strictly adhered to a way of life that was in alignment very much with their spiritual beliefs. So for whatever reason, the book resonated with me. It was the right thing at the right time, and I'm really just taking this book in while I'm in Alaska. And I guess a lot of the things that they did with the tea ceremony and the way that they had their code of behavior and kind of trying to mask their emotions and really be, stoic, and Zen Buddhism was very popular at that time. There was always these threats of, shaving your head and becoming a monk. Like, it was kind of like looked down on, like it was like a lower status thing, but like it was something that was respected. Like, if that's what you wanted to do, you could go and do it. And for whatever reason, where I was at that time in my life, I was craving something spiritual. I was craving something that was eternal, something that would give me a connection to a higher power, or to the universe, whatever you want to call it. I was doing a lot of mushrooms and stuff at that time as well. So whatever it was, I was like, I wanted to, I was kind of a hippie and I wanted to be in touch with that. But I also was an athlete and I also was an engineer. And so pragmatic and practical, but also wanting to have this very human experience. And I realized that if I were to, literally shave my head and move to a monastery, say in Tibet or in Japan, and tried to be one of these, Western guys that moves out there to try to assimilate their culture, that it really, one, I would lose complete contact with any of the people that I knew and loved at the time, namely my close family. And then two, it was a bit of like, kind of like, from what I understood from the novel, it was a bit of like a cop-out. Like, in other words, like, of course you can achieve peace, inner peace, calmness, and enlightenment when you're living in a temple all the time, and that's all you're contemplating is spirituality in the universe. Whereas it's a lot more challenging to be a connected, thoughtful, poised, controlled, spiritual person in society. And that, to me, appeared to be the gauntlet that was being thrown down. How could you live in society but then have a code of ethics and have a belief structure that maybe has nothing to do with the society? It has to do with what you want and who you are. And so there's this seed of this idea that was kind of basically, I had these external influences, which was family and society and expectations. And then I had this internal inspiration via a book, and made me say to myself, what else is out there? What other possibilities are there for me? What can I do to take advantage of every opportunity that I have in life and not give anything up in the process? So again, there'd be a cost, an opportunity cost, if you will, of living in a monastery. Like, yes, you'll get that peak experience of being in the monastery, but you also won't have any of the other stuff as well. So that became my model, I think, on some level. Like, fight what's going on externally with internal spark and inspiration, and then go from A to B to C. It's not the first thing you think of, but maybe the third thing you think of. And I realized what I wanted to do was, or the best thing to do would be to go into martial arts. That's just kind of what dawned on me. It was like, by going into martial arts, I get so much bang for my buck from a time investment standpoint. Not only do I get the physical fitness aspect of it, I get the ability to defend myself. I get also to move really cool and look cool doing it. Think Chuck Norris or Bruce Lee, or any of your favorite martial artists for that matter. It's just cool. It's just cool to move that way, and to be able to throw kicks and spin kicks and be confident. And once I went into the martial arts school, I must say or confess that I believe that is when the journey actually began. It's because I was now incorporating something into my life that was a constant and that was going to be a commitment that I made. Ultimately, that I looked at it like this. I was in school. I was going into my junior year, really my third year. But I had only done 3 semesters in that first year, 2 years. I had taken a semester off my first semester of my sophomore year. And so I'm behind, and I didn't do great either on my grades. So like, to get through engineering in 4 years is kind of ridiculous anyway. It's like kind of like a 5-year program if you're doing if you don't do the max credit hours. And the max would have been 18 credit hours. This is a bit of a sidebar, but if you're doing 18 credit hours for 4 years in a row, you have no life, and you're extremely academic, and God bless you if you can do an engineering degree in 4 years. I was more on like the 15 credit hour pace, plus had taken a semester off, so really I'm going into my third year, but I'm really probably at like the sophomore level classes. Why did I tell you all that? I guess the point is that from this point forward, the martial arts becomes a guidepost, or it becomes almost like the rails on if you're bowling and you put those bumpers in, right? I'm never going to go, too high or too low again, because I've put martial arts training in. I've made it a part of my life. And so I know what I wanted to say is I had all of this college in front of me to still go, and it was daunting to say the least. I was excited about doing the martial arts, and they allowed me to, basically I was looking at it like this. Worst case scenario, at the end of college, I'll be pretty damn good at martial arts, and I'll get an engineering degree in the process. And I can't tell you how many times over the course of my life, that's kind of how it's been. It's been like, I will do this other thing that is tough while simultaneously doing something that I'm very passionate about, because I know at the end of the cycle of effort, I will have 2 really great things to show for it. And it's kind of like the trophy and the experience. And so the journey of going into martial arts, when you go into martial arts, and I need to kind of tie this back to mission, but you have a realization about going to Alaska. If I don't go, I will personally suffer internally forever because I missed this opportunity. And so the mission became jump off into the unknown perpetually. Because isn't that what a birth is? Isn't that what the spiritual journey is? Isn't that when you start dying? You start dying the second you stop willing to jump off into the unknown with reckless abandon. And I think that becomes the problem with age and with responsibility. The older we get, the more fearful we are of death, most times. Or the more our body reminds us that we're not capable of doing the things we could do 20 years earlier. Or 5 years earlier, or whatever it is. You feel the age coming. In addition to your body not doing what it once did, you, on top of that, now have to pay the mortgage, get the kids through college, get them off to school. Just in the daily routine of things, you don't have as much energy as you once did. And so now you're just buried under the conflict of what to do next. And it just ends up being the default. Well, get them off to school, go to my job, that pays the bills, go home, put the kids to bed, scroll on the phone, have a glass of wine, go to bed. Not a bad life. I'm not knocking that life. I'm just saying that life is also an addictive waste of time if you have any other aspirations. And if you never even considered having any other aspirations, that's another conversation. But again, I think every single person has fundamental desires to do more than they're doing, especially if what they're doing is relatively easy or routine. You would instantly start saying like, well, I got this down, what else can I do? And oftentimes I think that spins off into less productive activities. So to sum up, there's external forces in your life telling you to stay in your lane, don't make any changes. There's an internal voice telling you that you are destined for something greater than what you're doing now, even if it's just simply to be out of your comfort zone and do something that helps you to grow. There probably are already things in your orbit that are right next to you, books you've purchased and never finished, courses you've wanted to take, that guitar that sits on the stand that you never touch, an old fill in the blank, that you used to like, I don't know, comic books, skateboard, all the things that you maybe wished you could have been before you became an adult. All of that stuff is sitting in some sort of dusty junk drawer in your head. And if you were willing to investigate what those things mean to you and get in alignment. So then, hold on, I want to get ahead of myself. So that's your inspiration. That's that thing. You know what? I always wanted to play guitar. Why don't I start figuring out how to play guitar and be excited about it? And then that puts you on your journey. Now you're going to hire the guitar teacher. Now you've met your this is your Yoda in the hero's journey, and now you're on this mission. And I would say, knowing that this is the cycle that everybody perpetually goes through or chooses to not go through, meaning it is right at everybody's fingertips, but they choose not to look and choose not to investigate. This is where what I'm saying is defining your mission creates the power structure for you to free yourself and become successful. I'll say that again. Defining your mission creates the power structure for you to free yourself and to become supremely more successful. And why is that the case? Well, think about it. If the process kind of happens naturally, then what would happen if you actively pursued putting these pieces into place so that you're a step ahead of the curve? In other words, you're driving the curve as opposed to it being, again, the other thing is you've got these vague thoughts of, and I'm using that a guitar example because it's one that, I do have a guitar. I'd love to play it more. But it's an example where the thing is sitting there. I haven't made it part of my mission. And it's not going to be part of my mission because my mission is right now is to produce an online course that explains the way that I have done things that have allowed me to have success in my life, and that I believe also fills in the blank of the lack of follow through or the lack of it's the things that are missing for me are what are going to be filled in. The journey that I'm on is putting this information out there. So by building this course, I am fulfilling my own destiny. How's that for cool, right? And so what I'm learning in the process of putting this course together is what my mission is. My mission is to finish this course and finish this book and have a book that goes side by side with the course so that I've created an interactive experience that allows you to see the way that my mind functions. And in that regard, I've hit all types of dopamine switches in my brain because I'm able to provide you with something that is improving for you and for your life. Because I've seen how mission statements and being in alignment with your goals and what you're trying to accomplish works from a professional organizational perspective. That's in Successful Project Management by Guido and Clements. And that was a college course. You're going to want to have everything in alignment. To Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, it's about having that definiteness of purpose, the having all your goals, having everything written down, having all these affirmations, having it basically be like I am programming myself to think, do, and act in a specific way that leads to my liberation on some level. And I think I've already done that over and over and over again from a spiritual perspective. And so I feel like that lesson I have learned. And what I'm literally trying to do now is provide you with the same roadmap and charge a lot of money for it. Plain and simple. I've already done all the hard work. Now I'm ready to collect the cash. We might edit that out. Let's see, what else? Tony Robbins, he's another one. Tony will tell you, do a personality test, find out about yourself, look at your strengths, put these things into place and into perspective so that okay, based on who I am, this is the way I function the most effectively. And here are my goals, and here's how I'm going to go and get those things and make those things happen. If you have no goals and you have no dreams or aspirations, you shouldn't be watching this. If you're watching this or reading the book, then you are trying to figure something out, and I'm telling you, it's right at your fingertips. However, you'll save yourself a lot of time, money, pain, and suffering by going through this course, because it's going to show you it's going to distill teachings from hundreds of disparate sources and collate it down into a logical system that will progress from one phase to the next, allowing you to build on the successes one at a time, and then to potentially get super dialed in on what it is that you want to do, and then go and execute that and have it become a reality. And then that also becomes your new baseline, and you're going to level up from there. Let's see how this went. 25 minutes spitting it.